So for this video, we're going to be looking at solving quadratics by factoring. We can solve quadratic equations by factoring the quadratic expression and then using the zero product property. So let's look at some examples of that. For number 1, I have x squared minus 4x is equal to 45. Whenever we want to solve by factoring, we want it to be in the standard form. So we want it to be in the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So my first step always when I'm solving by factoring is to make sure that it's in this standard form. Here I see it's not set equal to 0, so I'm going to subtract 45 to the other side. And so I get x squared minus 4x minus 45 is equal to 0. And now I want to factor this. Well, we learned when we were talking about factoring that when I have a trinomial and my a is equal to 1, to factor this, I'm looking for numbers that multiply to c. So I want to see what two numbers multiply to equal negative 45. But then I want these factors to add to equal b, which is negative 4. So they're multiplying to negative 45, so that means that one number is positive, the other is negative. And they're adding to a negative 4, so that means that my bigger number is negative. So just going in order, I have 1 times negative 45 is negative 45. 2 doesn't go in there. I have 3 times negative 15. 4 doesn't go in there. And then 5 times negative 9. And looking at those pairs, I see that 5 minus 9 gets me that negative 4. And so I have x plus 5, x minus 9 is equal to 0. And now this is just like what we did in the previous video. I have two things multiplied together that's equal to 0. So zero product property tells me that either x plus 5 equals 0 or x minus 9 is equal to 0. And solving both of those, I get that x equals negative 5. Add 9 to both sides. Get x equals 9. So my two answers are x equals negative 5, comma 9. Okay, let's look at number 2. So number 2, I have x cubed minus 25x is equal to 0. Here I have two terms. So it could be a difference of squares. However, this is an x cubed, so I know it's not a difference of squares. But I always do want to check for a GCF, and I see that both of these terms share an x. So I can factor out an x. And when I do that, I'm left with x squared, because x cubed divided by x is x squared, minus 25 is equal to 0. And now this still isn't quite factored. Here I have x squared minus 25. That I see it is a difference of squares. And you can see that I can rewrite this to being x squared minus 5 squared is equal to 0. And we learned when we're factoring difference of squares that this will end up just being x plus 5, x minus 5. So now I actually have three things that are multiplying together equal to 0. And so that means from the zero product property that either three of these can be 0. So I have x equals 0, x plus 5 equals 0, or x minus 5 is equal to 0. And solving both of these, this time I end up with three answers. I have that x is equal to negative 5, 0, or 5. Okay, let's look at one last one. Here I have x squared plus 3x is equal to negative x plus 77. Here I see this is again not in standard form because it's not set equal to 0. So I want to move all the terms to one side. I recommend moving them to the side that has the x squared on it because we want that to be positive. So I'm going to add x to both sides and subtract 77. And so I get x squared plus 4x minus 77 is equal to 0. Here I have a trinomial. It is with a equals 1, so I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to c, so two numbers that multiply to negative 77, but then add to equal 4. So since they're multiplying to a negative number, that means that one of the factors needs to be positive, the other needs to be negative. Since it's adding to a positive 4, my smaller number needs to be negative. So I have negative 1 times 77. 2 doesn't go in there, 3 doesn't go in there. My next one will be negative 7 and 11. And so I see the pair that adds to 4 is negative 7, 11. So I have x minus 7, x plus 11 is equal to 0. And so by my zero product property, that means that x minus 7 equals 0, or x plus 11 is equal to 0. Adding 7 to both sides, I get x equals 7. Subtracting 11, I get that x equals negative 11. So my two answers are negative 11 and 7.